Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Tash. Today's video is going to be me running through all of my top reads for 2023. I have compiled it down to a total of 10 books. I have tried to order them from 10 through to 1, but I just don't think that it's quite accurate. I feel like some books are on par with each other. Also, just as well, I don't know, like I really keep changing my mind every time. I don't think I'll ever have like a set list of exactly what order the books are gonna go in because I change my mind all the time. I'm just gonna go through my top 10 books, and then I'm also gonna go through, almost made it but didn't quite reach the top 10, but they are still books that I want to recommend to you because they are worth the time as well, and I didn't have the heart to not include them. Wait, does that make sense? I have a heart, so I had to include them. I didn't have a heart to, you know what I mean. I'm gonna go in no particular order. I'm gonna start with the most toxic one of all, which is I Love Letter to Whiskey by Candy Steiner. Come here. Good boy. Candy Steiner wrote this book, I believe, after she was going through her divorce. As you can imagine, this book just has all the emotions. It is probably one of the most stressful books I have ever read. I do want to give pre-warning that if anyone doesn't like the cheating trope, you will not like this book because it is a lot of right person, wrong time across a 10-year period. Basically, it starts out with Jamie and B meeting. They have like an encounter while they're running, and she is with her best friend. Unfortunately, the best friend catches his eye and they end up dating along through college. That is just sort of like where the story starts. All I can say is it's the most toxic, messy book. Like, it's such high angst to the point where you can't stop reading because you need to know what's about to happen. I'm a sucker for those type of books. I need a book that's going to consume me. Jamie and B's story was by no meaning the definition of perfect. It was a wild ride, very demanding on the soul. But yeah, I do want to point out as well to make sure that you do buy the special edition book, because the original book only becomes from B's point of view, and the special edition you do go through the entire story of B, which is probably like 300 pages, but then I think you get an additional like 200 pages which is from Jamie's point of view. And I know that may sound like it's repetitive, but there is 100% you need to read it. Like, you have to read it from his point of view. Just seeing how certain interactions throughout those 10 years, he was saying certain things that obviously she had interpreted one way, but from his point of view you just get absolute clarity of to like where his mindset was during that time, and like how his life and the circumstances that they're both under have affected them so much. It's definitely worth the additional money if you can get the special edition. You can also read it on Kindle Unlimited, I believe. Highly recommend. 5-star read for me last year. Next we have Divine Rivals, which I'm sure this is probably on so many people's top 10 reads of the year, because I just fell in love with Rebecca Ross just from this book alone, and I've never read any of her books prior. I have currently just started the second book to this, so I'm in the middle of it. I'm super excited to see where it's taking me. I just need to know what's happened. So this does follow Iris and Ronan. They are workplace rivals, as I'm sure you can tell by the title. Roman he's more of like the wealthier, he's got a more posh upbringing. He is from good blood, as they would say, as where she is not. Iris is from a lower class. Struggles definitely to get through the bills and lots of family problems, especially with having a mum who's not quite as present in her life, if that's the right word to put it as. This book goes through so much with these two characters, with their families, with them as their careers taking off as they are newly 18 and in the workforce, while also going through an entire war, which is what we are learning about throughout this entire book, and why her brother's gone off to war. Now she's trying to find him. That is one of the main plot points. Emotional roller coaster, but the writing in this was just so impeccable that I loved how she could just put together some words that could make something so simple as like her going to the shop to buy some food, just making it sound so lovely. It's also such a tender romance between Roman and Iris, because they do have these typewriters. The typewriters are like the main plot point for their romance. They have received them both through families inheriting them. Yeah, inheriting the typewriters, and now they send off letters to each other without realizing that they are speaking to each other, because these typewriters are magical. When they type something out onto a piece of paper, it would actually magically send to the other person, and one day they figure out that they're not actually speaking to typewriter, they're actually speaking to someone else completely, and from there they just have like this anonymous conversation with each other where they get really deep and share quite a lot of things that they wouldn't usually share with people, especially like during such hard times. I'm not going to say too much else because I don't want to give it all away, but this was such an incredible read. 5 stars for sure. Obviously all of these are going to be 5 stars. Why am I saying that? But yes, I loved Iris and Rain, and they are just so sweet and wholesome. Probably, I think this might be my only YA book that got into my top 10, but I do have YAs that I will be showing you afterwards. We have The Serpent and the Wings of Night, which is an adult fantasy book. I fell in love with this book because it is vampires with a human who has been taken in by the Vampire King. Trying to remember how to pronounce her name. I was like, wait, I need to remember her name. I think it's Aurea, and Rain, I think that's his name. Aurea has been taken by the Vampire King when she was younger. She's been brought up her whole life being protected and just basically being trained by him. Then one day there is a legendary tournament that is held by the goddess of death. She basically grants the winner a wish of their choice, and Aurea decides to join that with her father's permission. Gets put into some trials. So this book is just a adventurous, I wouldn't say Hunger Games because it's not like Hunger Games, but it does have those trials like that where they are pushed to their limits to see how far they can go. And with her being human in a trial with all vampires, it's basically about her trying to find alliances with creatures that don't like her and want her dead. It's very exhilarating, I would say, because the whole time you're just on the edge of your seat going, what is about to happen? She's in fight or flight mode from start to finish almost her whole entire life, and yeah, you just don't know who to trust. And when she does finally make an alliance, obviously she does meet Rain, who is the male main character. He is a vampire and he is the enemy of her father. Yeah, I mean, highly recommend this book. It is a duet. There is a novella in between. Next we have Caught Up by Liz Tomford. I haven't got the physical book for this. I need to go get it. I need it as a trophy to go on my shelf. But this is a single dad sports romance. It is a baseball romance. Malachi and Miller meet one day in an elevator. They don't get off on the best of terms. She has just been put in a position where now she's in between jobs, and Malachi is now a recently single dad. He's struggling to keep a nanny, and the nanny that he does keep getting, just he always finds an excuse to get rid of him. The coach of the baseball team decides that he is going to hire his daughter, and who else could it be? It is Miller. So Miller ends up taking the job. Yeah, obviously he can't fire her. They don't get along, but his son is in love with her. He's finding it hard to make excuses to not have her around, especially since her son and him get along so well. Forced proximity where they have to be around each other all the time. This story is just full of warmth and happiness. I fell in love with both of them. My favorite part about this entire book, even though I do love the romance, the found family, and it's so emotional. I get teary just thinking about it. Monty, who is her dad, which is the baseball coach, was such an integral part of this whole story. Why I love him. He was so funny but so wholesome and just perfect. It was a perfect addition to the entire book. Max, who was the son, he was an annoying little kid that you always find in books. He was so perfect for like what was needed. We do also get to meet the next characters as well for this entire Windy City series, which will be book 4. I'm just so excited because Liz Tomford, every time each book's just gotten better for me, so I'm excited to see where she takes the next one. Yeah, Daddy Malachi, I am obsessed with him. I go feral for him. Feral, actually feral. I need to stop talking with my hands. I'm really sorry, but if that's like really distracting for you, but I'm such a hand talker. Yeah, I was absolutely frothing at the mouth for Malachi. You should have seen my notes app, because I'm a person while I'm reading, I like to take note of like what tropes are going through, or just like things that have been said, so that when I go to write my reviews or talk with you guys about them, I can remember certain things that have happened. My notes app for this book was just so long. I had to scroll, and I usually don't have to scroll that much. I love this book. Love it, love it, love it. Next we have All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata. This was my first book of hers. I have read a couple of others now, and this one still hands down has been my favorite. Tobias Rhodes. Tobias Rhodes. I have a thing for dads, as I'm sure you can tell. There's 2 in a row. This is just like the perfect single dad small town romance. So we do have Aurora. She has recently moved back to her small town, which she grew up in. She hasn't been there in such a long time, but after her mother passes away, she decides to go back and get back to her roots and figure out what she wants to do with her life. Yeah, so she goes back, ends up finding a rental, which is at this guy's house, and she's now going to be living in his garage upstairs. Like, there's a room upstairs. So yeah, they have a bit of forced proximity. They're almost neighbors. You just get so many of those perfect moments where he is just so grumpy to the point where you hate him almost, but then you know deep down he's just so nervous to even speak to her, and she's just this ball of sunshine who wants to do anything to make everyone feel comfortable, and she just tries her absolute best to try and crack him. With the son, who's also living at the property, he is a teenager, so he's like a vital part to the story as well. Yeah, there's so many of the moments where they have a hurt comfort scene where she gets hurt, he goes to the rescue, he saves her, he mends her, he gets her all the medication, pulls out the first aid kit. Like, it's just so sweet, so wholesome. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Mariana Zapata is definitely a author that I'm on the lookout for now. Every time I see one of her books in stores, I'm definitely still trying to prioritize her backlist as well, but I'm just, yeah, her writing, the slow burn of it all. I mean, when I say that this is a slow burn, it is a slow burn, and I'm talking, they won't even kiss until the 90% mark. But when they kiss, when they even touch hands, it's like the most gratifying feeling I've ever felt in my life. I will put this on a pedestal. I love this book so much. Next we have a fan fiction, which I am not going to rate this, but I have included it in my top reads because I do know you're not meant to rate fan fiction now. It is a new thing that I've learned. The Auction is a dark AU fan fiction for Harry Potter, which is Hermione and which is for Draco and Hermione, which we do call Hermione. This one is part of a series, so the series is the first book, which is All the Right Things, then we have All the Wrong Things, and then The Auction. All the Right Things is when the Order win the war. It is from Hermione's point of view and how the Death Eaters are being saved from being put in Azkaban. All the Wrong Things is that same story, but from Draco's point of view. And then you go into The Auction, which is when Voldemort won the war. Basically the Order being captured and put into the auction and sold off to all of the Death Eaters. It is a dark book, but it does also have like some lightness to it. There is a bit of humor. There is the captor-captive trope where Draco has bought Hermione and is forced to live in the house with him, and then start to learn like basically how the house lives with his mum, his dad, all the elves in the house, and yeah, she is under order of Draco from that point onward. I'm not going to give too much away. It is definitely something that you should probably go into blind. The reason I did bring up that this is part of a series is because reading book 1 and book 2 do actually help with like the smaller things that are mentioned in The Auction. There is just so many things about their relationship and what they have in The Auction that are relating to the other books. You don't technically have to read the other 2 in the series because they are very long. You can just go in and read The Auction. It is a standalone in itself. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that. But yeah, one of my top reads of the year. Next we have Stephanie Garber, which is The Ballad of Never After. I'm sure you've seen the Once Upon a Broken Heart series online. It has gone viral these last few years. I started it. I didn't really like the first book. I did give it a 3-star just because it was a bit slow for me to get into. But going into The Ballad of Never After, I have never read a more perfect book in my life. I really was obsessed with this series until the 3rd book came out, but I still do want to mention that I love this book because as much as the series did become a bit of a letdown in book 3, this book was still, I can't even describe the feelings it put me through. There was so much going on. It was so fast paced, so much fun. I loved all the characters. Evangeline, I can't pronounce her name, and Jax are just absolutely incredible characters to read about. We get to go along a story of Jax, who is the Prince of Hearts. Is it the Prince of Hearts? Yeah, Prince of Hearts. And gets into sort of like a partnership with Jax because Jax gives her a wish, and unfortunately when you make a wish with the fates, it's not so, they can twist your words. So yeah, that's like where the series starts off in book 1, and book 2 is now her trying to get out of she gets into a sticky situation between some characters in the book, and she really needs to start watching her back, and she's trying to figure out who she needs to trust. The ending in itself is a 6-star for me because I have never had a ending like that happen to me before, and yeah, I just think it's so funny. This author now, I like Stephanie Garber definitely got me. As much as Stephanie Garber's written this very like mysteriously almost dark but fairy tale book, the ending was just perfection. Like, there is nothing that will make me forget this ending. Still think about it constantly. I think she is an absolute legend for what she did, and yeah, I highly recommend this series just to even read this book. Some people absolutely loved the 3rd book. I unfortunately didn't like the 3rd book. I would still recommend just going in to experience it for yourself, because who knows, you might like the 3rd book. Everyone's opinions are different. So yeah, this book was just makes me scream. Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. This was the first pregnancy trope book that I fell in love with this year, and I actually started to appreciate the pregnancy trope so much more because of this book. There is something so special with what's in the pages here. If I could snort up the lines, I honestly would, because Win and Bo have this most palpable connection. They have so much humor, so much care for each other that I just love reading about. Their connection, their relationship, their openness, and their mutual respect for each other, beautifully done. They do meet one night, they hit it off, they have such great chemistry. They decide to have a one-night stand, and they think, oh yeah, we won't see that person again. Lo and behold, obviously they do get pregnant. Wynn decides that she does want to keep the baby. She informs Bo and says like, I want to keep it. At first, obviously, he is very shocked. The thing I love most about him is that at first he obviously takes a minute to take in the information of him having a child, but then the next thing he does is completely close off his thoughts and emotions and ask how she is, and says, how are you feeling, what can I do for you? There for her from the moment that he finds out. Yeah, this book follows them navigating how they're going to be parents together, even though they don't have quite a normal relationship that normal parents would have when going into this sort of scenario. It is a book about imperfections. They both do have disabilities as well, so you get to see them struggle through different aspects, but then also realize that the other person is there to help them. So if one person can't do one thing, then the other one can always step in because they have that ability. I love the balance that they give each other. Their partnership is unmatched. So great. Love this book. 6 stars. If There's a Way by Jessie Walker. This is a romance. I can't even talk about this book. I get so sad. This is the 2nd book in a duet, but the duet is technically going to be part of a series which is called The Lost Boys. So there will be a 3rd book which will be for other characters which you meet in these 2 books. I have given the 1st book a 4.5 star, and this one is a 5-star read. So these books do follow Will and Waylon. In this book, Will has recently just gone through a loss, and he decides to get on his motorbike and travel across the country. Currently, I believe lives in Chicago, but ends up back in the small town where he grew up. That's where Waylon is still currently living. Will decides to stay, meet with him, and Waylon does not have the best communication skills. So yeah, there is a bit of miscommunication in here, but there is miscommunication for good reason. I do also want to quickly jump in and give trigger warnings for this book, so if you do have any triggers, make sure you check them up for this, because it is definitely sad and there are definitely some harder topics that are in across all of these books. Book 1 follows them reconnecting and just finding their relationship again from when they were children, because it is a childhood, friends to enemies to lovers, trying to forgive each other for what happened in their childhood. So there is a bit of a mystery surrounding that. Then it goes into book 2. Book 2 is where the emotions and all of the action happen. There is a mystery element. There is a lot of violence and negativity and things that do happen across this entire series, but this book really rounds it together and gives us that freedom, the hope, the sense of relief almost, which is what was really needed after reading the first half of this book. The second book really ties it all together and makes you feel whole again. It sort of puts you back together while also ripping your heart out. And it's a book of desperation and damaged souls, just recklessness and toxicity, very homophobic small town, sheltered upbringings. It's a lot of everything. So if you do like books where it does have harder topics like that, I highly recommend this series. Boy, is it hard to read, but when it draws an emotion out of you like these books do, oh, you need like a tea and a hot blanket. Wait, what? A hot blanket. You need a blanket and a hot tea after finishing this, because you just need to cozy up. Maybe watch a few funny movies, a comedy, because yeah, it really does take a toll on the happiness levels. But yeah, it does round up really beautifully at the end, and I can't wait for book 3 in the series, which should hopefully be this year. You Were the View by Jessica Joyce. I fell in love with this book. It was recommended to me by a couple of mutuals. After I saw it going a little bit viral, I thought I have to read this. As much as it was social media related, as you could probably tell with the girl holding the phone on the cover, I don't think that deterred from the story. So the plot follows Noelle, and Noelle's grandmother recently passes. She ends up going through a lot of her old belongings and finding some images of her, one including a man that she has never seen, and she looks obviously quite young in the photo. She realizes that this may be a old lover and ends up putting it on TikTok, and TikTok blows up the image, and she just says, help me find this guy. I really need to figure out like their story, who this man is. So it's just sort of helping her move on with the grief and deal with her loss of her grandma. Gets in contact with one of the users who comments on the photo saying that that was their grandfather, meets up with them knowing that they are actually in the same town. And when she gets there to meet the grandfather, she realizes that her high school nemesis Theo is there, and that is his granddad. So the story does follow on a little bit of a road trip. In the long run, Theo ends up having to come on because they are going on the honeymoon that her grandma and his granddad had planned when they were younger. So to fulfill her dream, she sort of does it with him. Theo comes along obviously to make sure things are okay with him. I really love the story between Paul and Noelle, which is Theo's grandfather, their connection and their love. The small things like photography, the happiness that he brings to the story was just so needed. Oh, and guys, we all know what happens on the road trip. Of course, there is one bed. There is a one bed trope. Oh, there is a one bed trope for both of these. This has the one bed trope. And I don't know how I almost forgot to mention that Theo is insanely rich. He owns a big major company. You'll understand when you read it how that impacts their relationship and what he does for her with his company. I love this book, so good. Next we have Fear the Flames by Olivia Rose Darling. I recently read this book in December, maybe November. I've never read this author's book. Actually, I think this might even be her debut. I honestly think this may be her debut book. Fear the Flames follows, I'm gonna have to pronounce all of this right, so Elwyn, the Princess of Emerith, but she's also now a queen. She is the Queen of Astilion. I'm gonna explain this because basically as a child she was the princess for her father's kingdom, but her father locked her away because she was the mother of these dragons which he wanted control over, so he had to control her. By the time she was old enough, almost faked her death, but she ran away, and she then now had started her own kingdom, which is the Astilion. I think I'm pronouncing that wrong. Yeah, she's now slowly been building up her kingdom to try and take back her dragons from her father, which she hasn't seen in many years. While she is training up and slowly building up the courage to do that, she runs into her father's rival kingdom, which is a completely separate kingdom. The head of the army, he is the commander. Commander Caden finds her because he had an inkling that she was alive. They then form a reluctant alliance. They want to take him down together, and they think the best way to do that is to use the resources from the other kingdom while also using her, obviously having the connection to the dragons, and they think the dragons are the key to taking down her father. He is just a terrible man. So the story starts out one of the most funniest books, while also just having the complete fantasy world building, the friendships, the found family, the most I've honestly never had so much fun. Like even the spice was so good. Like there were so many scenes where they're in a brothel and they have to like role play almost so that they can get information, and it's so funny. I love all of the characters. They call themselves the Band of Thieves, all of the main characters. I love every single one of them. They have a special place in my heart. Dying for book 2, so I do want to give pre-warning. Book 2 probably won't come out till 2025. Stop, I can't talk about it. I actually can't talk about it because book 1 is being currently published through Penguin, I believe. Olivia's rewriting the book. She said that she's just making some minor tweaks, nothing really to like the plot, and then she'll start book 2. Wow, what a book. This is incredible. If you are looking for a romantasy book, this is high romance, high sexual tension. There is so much banter. The banter is incredible. Caden, wow, he is so attentive while also just like so vocal about everything. And like look at all the tabs that I have. I don't usually tab, but that's just like interactions that they had that I was like, oh, spicy. You have to read this. 6-star read for me. Absolutely loved it. Then this is technically going to be my top read of the year because nothing else has compared to it, and I can't even put into words. I'm sure you guys have seen it go viral everywhere, probably on TikTok this year, which is the reason why I picked it up, because I had not heard of like Dramini prior to this. Yeah, that just sent me down a rabbit hole once I did start this book. So very cool. Yeah, this book, I can't even talk about it. Nothing compares to this book. This is a perfect book. The fact that this isn't published or will ever be published is so crazy to me, that this is like a free book. This author has done the God's work. Okay, it is a dark after the war fic, but oh, my camera's about to die. Voldemort wins the war. It is The Handmaid's Tale meets Harry Potter. Put it together. The worst case scenario, there is really bad on-page stuff that happens. You will have to check trigger warnings. I highly recommend it to anyone who needs it, but if you can go in blind, I recommend going in blind. It is a long book, but it will consume your everyday life and your every thought, and you will not regret it. It will not feel like you're reading a long book. You will want more once it's finished. It is so addicting. I've never felt anything like it. I read it almost 6 months ago, I think, probably a little less, but I still think about it every day. Nothing has compared. No book will ever compare. It's a work of art. Yeah, highly recommend. You need to read it. Moving in to my special mentions, let's see if I can get them in before my camera dies. So special mentions to Reckless by Elsie Silver, Single Dad. We got The Black Cat and the Golden Retriever. It is so good. Final Offer by Lauren Asher. This is a single parent again, but focusing a lot on addiction and mental health representation. Highly recommend. So incredible. A fantasy book, One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. This is the first one in the duet. It has the most magical magic system I've ever seen in my life. It is so unique, so awesome. It's gothic, dark fantasy. You will love it. Love Redesigned by Lauren Asher. If you want a billionaire romance that has all of the angst and all of the spice, you will fall in love with this. The small town romance vibes. Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. I have never met a more perfect man than Dr. Jacob Maddox. Their love story is sweet, tender, so romantic, so sweet, so heartfelt. I fall in love with Dr. Jacob Maddox every single time, and I have never cried so much about him. He has anxiety. You need to read this. Powerless by Lauren Roberts. This is the first book in her series. I can't wait for the second book, Reckless. If you love a woman who holds a knife to a man's throat, read this. Enemies to lovers, royalty, there's drama, plot twists, there is trials. Worth the time, trust me, you need to read it. My camera may have died. That is my wrap up for 2023. All of my favorite reads, a little bit about them, and all of the runner-up books that I've had as well. So I've had such a good year. I've had a lot of terrible reads, but I've also had a lot of great reads, and these are evidence of all the great reads that I've had. I would really appreciate it if you could comment down in the comments your favorite read of the year, or one that's not been listed here, or if you have had the same top read, please mention it down below. Yeah, if you have any other reads that you would like me to try out based on what my tastes are, if you think that you've got one that I might like, I will add it to my TBR, especially if it's one of your top reads. Thanks for coming along. I'm going to love you and leave you, and I will see you in my next video. I appreciate you all so much, and I'll see you in the next one.